Welcome to today's seminar, Preparing Minnesota Students for Career and Postsecondary Opportunities, using personal learning plans and individualized education plans to get there. This is Deborah Lukovius from the Pacer Center. And I welcome you on behalf of Pacer and on behalf of Partners for Youth, Minnesota's Disability Employment Initiative. We are delighted today to be able to share some information with you about personal learning plans and the connection with individualized education programs. I'm excited for this topic. I've spoken to our presenters this morning, and we are getting we're the first people to get this presentation. I want to take care of a couple of housekeeping issues. There are materials that are going to be available to you related to today's presentation, and we will make those available to you and send them to the email address that you provided when you registered for today's webinar. In addition, I want to direct your attention to the sidebar on the right-hand side of at least my screen, and encourage you to type any questions that you have in the box on the right where it says type message here. We've reserved some time at the end of the session today, specifically for questions, and I know the speakers have also provided contact information if you need additional assistance. Without further ado then, I am going to introduce you to our three speakers. Jane Spain, many of you affiliated with the DEI project, know Jane for the leadership she's provided to our group and throughout Minnesota in special education transition. And we also welcome Angie Johnson and Michelle Kamenoff from the Office of Career and College Success. And Angie is going to start off with the first slide today. I'm going to turn it over to Angie. Thank you.
Greetings. I'm very happy to be here. My role at the Minnesota Department of Education is a supervisor in the Office of Career and College Success. As part of the responsibilities of our division, we have been providing training and information, technical assistance to districts regarding the personal learning plans legislation. So I would like to begin our session today by going through the specific parts of the legislation. There are 9 elements, and I think it's important to examine exactly what that legislative language entails. We also then will move from there to talking about individualized education programs and how that will all relate to preparing the important career and post-secondary opportunities for all of our students. So with that, I want to start with a very large, kind of overreaching or kind of a big umbrella with the world's best workforce legislation before I get to the personal learning plan legislation. All of the districts are required to submit to their public, to their stakeholders in October, a plan which indicates how they are helping all of their students with 5 different goals. This also has a summary report that is sent into the Department of Education. But as you can see, the 5 different components that the districts are all working on with using data and setting goals and creating initiatives and finding strategies include the school readiness goals, the 3rd grade literacy goals, the graduation from high school goals, but the 4th one there is that all students attain career and college preparedness. And the last one there is the academic achievement gap that we would like to have initiatives to close. So with thinking about the very specific 120B 125 personal learning plan legislation, that relates very much to this 4th bullet that needs to be in the district's plan. So one of the things when we've been working with districts all over the state is to talk about how can you look at your district initiatives that are already in place to ensure college and career preparedness for your students, and can you align existing programs that are already in your World's Best Workforce Strategic Plan with the personal learning plans that each one of your high school students must have. Because as you develop your plan that is locally designed and of course owned by and very accountable to your stakeholders, you would want to share the good work that you are doing as a district with regard to helping your students be career and college ready. And so making this work for the personal learning plans and other initiatives work together will, I think, be better than taking it as just a separate, disparate, this is a legislation piece over here, here's World Best Workforce legislation over here. So I think that's an important thing to kind of remember as all districts are working for these 5 goals, and how can the personal learning plan legislation fit in to that larger district goal. So I want to just mention that because I think that's an important piece to see that it does all fit together. The other thing that we talk about is the definition now in statute of what does it mean to be career and college ready. So when you are developing your strategic plan related to the World's Best Workforce goals and your personal learning plan legislation implementation of those goals, you want to think about, are we, using a definition of career and college ready? Can we have this available and promote this with our stakeholders and to the public, and even so that our students understand what does it mean to be career and college ready? So if you look at the definition on the slide, it means that this high school graduate would have knowledge and the skills and competencies to successfully pursue the career pathway, including post-secondary credit, which would lead to the degree, the diploma, the certificate, the industry recognized credential, and of course, employment. So when we look at this as a definition, what this is really saying is that the students who are career and college ready will be able to complete the credit-bearing coursework at a 2 or 4-year college or university or other credit-bearing post-secondary programs without the need for remediation. So looking at that definition, then again, how does the personal learning plans legislation fit in? So let's consider that. So the title of 120B 125, the formal long title, is Planning for Students' Successful Transition to Post-Secondary and Employment, Personal Learning Plans. And so school districts in the year 2013 and 14 were required to assist all of their students by no later than grade 9 to explore their educational, college, career interests, aptitudes, aspirations, and then to develop this plan that would ensure a smooth and successful transition to post-secondary education or employment. What's important is to look at the language by no later than grade 9, because what this means is then all of your 9th graders, 10th graders, 11th graders, 12th graders would need to have a plan, a personal learning plan for the components that are in the legislation. We, however, also encourage districts to think about doing activities and planning earlier than grade 9, because we know it's important the earlier that we can help our students understand what it means to be able to successfully transition to post-secondary education and employment, the better it will be for them and also for their families. And so again, no later than grade 9, but we have seen many districts start to do comprehensive plans from elementary all the way up to ensure that strategies are aligned and that the implementation of a plan is cohesive within the district. And so that's exciting to see the work that's being done even younger than grade 9. So that's something I wanted to point out. I think it's important to think about no later than grade 9 as including earlier in interventions and strategies. So there are 9 components, and so I'd like to go through them one at a time and maybe just explain some of the wording. When we think about what the district needs to do for the legislation, one says to provide the comprehensive plan to prepare for and complete a career and college-ready curriculum by meeting the state and local academic standards and developing career and employment-related skills such as teamwork, collaboration, creativity, communication, critical thinking, and good work habits. So this is really talking about not only the actual academic standards and the curriculum, but also soft skills. And when we talk to districts, we say this is the job of all people working with students, because all of the teachers are going to be delivering the state and local academic standards, and as well, they're going to be working in the classrooms helping students with the soft skills, using teamwork, collaboration, creativity, communications, critical thinking, and good work habits in all of their assignments and all of their activities. We also think about, even within your own school, whenever you have the coaches, advisors, they're all going to be working on teamwork and collaboration and these soft skills as well. So thinking about this, number one is it's comprehensive. It's comprehensive because it does include everybody in the school working very hard to help the students be able to do this. The second one talks about emphasizing the academic rigor and high expectations. And so for every student, grade 9 through 12, you would want to emphasize that they should be taking courses that are going to be the courses that are going to stretch them. You're going to be expecting that they have, when they're registering for courses, taking the courses that really are going to be the best fit for what they would like to do for transition to post-secondary education and employment. And so that becomes an important part for every single student to have that high expectations. And I think that's evident in number 2. The third one there, we need to help students think about their interests, their aptitudes, their aspirations, their personal learning styles, all of those things that may affect their career and college-ready goals and what their post-secondary education employment choices are going to be. And so having very targeted activities for the students to be able to have career interest inventories, to be able to look at what their abilities are, to be able to look at the different types of employment choices out there. What are the different types of careers, and how does that fit with the actual students' goals? And I think that's important because it's a very personal level for each student to be able to look at that. The fourth item is that our students then should be setting appropriate career and college-ready goals. And so once the students understand what their aptitudes and abilities are, what are the timelines? How can they achieve those particular goals? What do they have to do in order to make that successful transition to whatever their post-secondary education and career plan will be? The fifth one there is talking about helping students to actually, have access to education and career options. What are those options out there? And so many of our students and their families do not know about the wide range of opportunities that exist. And what are those different certifications? What are those different, 2-year degrees? What's out there? What's available? And so this is an important part of the personal learning plan legislation for the school to determine how can we get this information out into the hands of our students and their parents. The next part, number 6, is looking at your strong academic content, but how does that then fit into career-focused courses? How can we do applied and experiential learning? How can we actually have those hands-on opportunities where the students see what exactly is the career in that field or in that academic area going to entail? And we know how very much relevant and this can be engaging to our students. So by doing these hands-on types of experiential opportunities and having the students see what's out in the world of work can be very motivating for our students. And I think that's an important part of that personal learning plan as well. The 7th one there is talking about counseling. And so what is the appropriate counseling that each student has to have with regard to a personal learning plan? There are supports, there are assistance, but each student will need different types of support and assistance to complete their coursework in order to prepare the best that the student can for post-secondary and for careers. And then what about information? What does post-secondary cost? What are the eligibility requirements? What is financial aid all about? What are scholarships? So those particular things, that information can be delivered appropriately to each student based on what that student's goal will be. And then, of course, 8 is talking about collaborative partnerships. And we're talking about partnerships from pre-kindergarten all the way through grade 12. And we have post-secondary institutions, we have economic development agencies, we have local and regional employers. We have so many different people that should be able to support the students' transition to post-secondary. And so how do we involve our community partners? How do we bring in businesses? How do we make this personal learning plan work involve more than just who's in the school building? And that's, I think, a very important thing that we need to help the schools discover how they could do that. And then 9, this is talking about that it has to be annually. So at least annually, it has to be reviewed by the student and the student's parent or guardian and the school to ensure that what the student's course taking schedule is going to be moving that student along for the right progress to meet the academic standards, graduation requirements, and then a chance to succeed with employment or post-secondary education. And remember the definition that we talked about earlier without having to complete remedial coursework to get it. The 9B talks about the grade level curriculum that can instruct, but of course you're not going to obligate any student to involuntarily select or pursue a particular career. It's like we're giving them instruction, we're introducing them, but not requiring a particular career. And then 9C talks about in our English learners. And so remember that we need to make sure they're part of this personal learning plan as well. And so that the appropriate curriculum, targeted materials, and all of those development opportunities for educators to be able to help our English learners to also be able to be career and college ready is an important part of the legislation. And the last part is when they're doing the plan, recognize the unique possibilities of each student, because we want to ensure that whatever is in each student's personal learning plan does reflect that student's unique talents, the skills, the abilities as the student grows and develops and learns. So that's an important part of that. The next part now I'm going to pass the headset over to Michelle Kavanaugh, who is going to talk about some other topics related to this with career technical education. So at this time, I'm going to let Michelle introduce herself to you. Thank you.
Good afternoon. I'm Michelle Kamenov, and I am at the Minnesota Department of Education, and I'm the supervisor for career development and career and technical education. I work in the same division and unit as Angie Johnson, who you just heard from, and I oversee the work within our agency around career development, as well as a program that has been referred to in the past and has been known as transition disabled, but with some changes in legislation, that's important to note that that program is actually called Access to Career and Technical Education for Students with Disabilities. And so I oversee the division there and staff members who work with that program. So I want to start and talk about the experiential learning. And I think it's important to start to talk about the definition of that. And I want to note that in 2014, the legislature called together a task force to discuss career pathways and career and technical education programs. And there's a definition that they came up with that was talking about experiential learning in the broader context. And that is that experiential learning is learning that includes career exploration through classes and courses that include one or more hands-on, real-life, real-world experiences for students. And some of the examples of those programs may include job shadowing opportunities, mentoring opportunities, service learning work, some very general community service or some volunteering opportunities for students, internship opportunities, a formal or registered youth apprenticeship program, or some employment experiences for students. So in summary, we really want to think about experiential learning as a process of learning through an actual experience. I think often there has been some confusion in thinking about work-based learning being experiential learning. And we're really looking at this as sort of a reverse, that experiential learning is that really broad umbrella, and work-based learning experiences are one of the examples or one of the experiences that students may be a part of. So we look to sort of this graphic of experiential learning. Well, you'll see a number of different examples, some of those that I just reviewed and mentioned. So there may be some opportunities for students to be a part of a youth apprenticeship program, and that may be a registered through the state sort of apprenticeship program. Service learning opportunities where students are identifying a genuine community need, and those sort of service opportunities are connected to classroom academic work that would also involve some reflection and a change in process that is occurring within a community. There are entrepreneurship opportunities. There may be some tutoring, whether that be some formal tutoring or some informal tutoring opportunities. Internships. Again, work-based learning experiences. Again, these may be some formal sort of work-based learning experiences where students are out on the site, where you have a work-based learning coordinator who is overseeing those experiences, some job shadowing, and some mentoring. And that, I want to focus on looking at the center of the wheel that's there. And so I think often people refer or think of these as sort of the soft skills, but I really like to think about these as being the core skills, as they're the foundation. This is really about how we connect the academic pieces together. So you'll see within the center of that wheel, you do see your math, your science, your English, and those are the core foundational pieces when we think about our academic work. But all of those other pieces that you have in there around the knowledge and skills are then really about the application of that. So how do we ensure that students understand and know how to apply and participate in teamwork activity, critical thinking skills, problem solving, again, how all of that relates back. And when you bring all of these different pieces together and they work hand in hand, this is really how we're able to talk about students being career and college ready. Thank you. So as Angie talked a lot about the personalized learning plans and some of the suggestions for that, this is sort of a process for folks to think about at the local level within their districts, are how you put some of these pieces together and some of those critical components. So when we talk about document and having a process, what's really important here is to ensure that you have a plan. And how do you ensure that everyone knows and understands what that plan is? So how do you make sure that all of your staff in your school and in your district know what your personalized learning plan and process will be? How do you ensure parents know and understand what that process is and how you're going to document all of the components and elements of this personalized learning plan? And looking at systems of documentation. What sort of systems do you have in place? So there are a number of districts that utilize systems such as MCIS that has a template, and looking at the personalized learning plan again, how do you document it and how do you ensure that there are ways for students to share that information with staff and with parents? Looking at this as being, you heard Angie talk about this being school-wide. This is not just the responsibility of school counselors, but it's really important to ensure that the whole school is involved in this, and that includes an IEP case manager. So it is important, again, as we're talking about all of this with these personalized learning plan, and how do we make the connections to the goals and activities that each of our students have. Students using this regularly, even though statute indicates that this needs to be updated annually, this is really something that should be a living document. So how can you incorporate this so that students are utilizing and thinking about career investigation experiences that they may have had? So if you have homeroom periods, advisory periods, career and technical education classes that students may be a part of. So again, how do you continually revisit this? Leveraging community partnerships and opportunities. How are you having conversation and involving business and industry in these sort of experiences? Again, thinking back to real life, real world experiences and having them at the table when you're beginning to think about those opportunities. Connecting academics and the enhanced learning activities. Again, all of the real-world experiential learning opportunities should be connected back to your academics to ensure that this is an application of that learning process, that we don't have these things that are done in isolation, but how do they work hand in hand? How do we ensure that this is connected to the content of the academic courses? And then another is just thinking about how you make that connection back to the goals of a student's IEP. So again, ensuring that we aren't doing these things in isolation. And then career exploration and development. What are the opportunities for students to explore a variety of different types of careers? And that may be through research, that may be through visiting sites, that may be through interviewing and having conversation, guest speakers, and things of that nature. So how do you create those broader opportunities to think about, talk about a variety of different types of careers and the college requirements or the work experience requirements that may go along with that? So in looking back at some of the planning steps and stages as you look back at this legislation is creating a personalized learning plan leadership committee. This is really a best practice, and you want to be sure that you have special education staff members that are a part of those committees. The importance and value of this committee is to be sure that everybody is thinking about those transition periods for students. So middle school to high school transitions, high school to post-secondary, or high school to employment, or post-secondary to employment. So again, ensuring that you have a broad, wide range of individuals who may be serving on that sort of leadership committee. analyzing the key elements of the legislation and putting together a plan. In doing this, it's really important to do sort of an analysis of what you may already be doing and what you have in place. So taking a closer look at all of the elements that Angie talked to, looking at that legislation, but really identifying what you are already doing so that you aren't recreating the wheel and starting back. We have a toolkit, so this next piece is looking at a couple of different examples and places that you may be able to go to take a look at some examples of what some school districts are doing. There's a toolkit on the Department of Education website. You'll see the link that's there. There are also looking at some national websites that may talk about some individual learning plans, which may be a great reference for you to look at, and then identifying and recording a method that can be accessed by all students, teachers, and parents. And from here, I'm going to turn it over to my colleague, Jane Spain.
Thank you, Michelle. As Michelle and Angie shared today, there are many components of the personal learning plan that should sound and feel very similar to a student's individualized education program. And one of the things today that I would like to do is, number one, really talk about how does the IDE legislation refer to making sure that students with disabilities are ready for the world of employment and career opportunities. If we reflect back on what is the purpose of IDEA, the purpose really is to make sure that not only do students with disabilities have available to them free and appropriate public education, but it really is about how are we preparing them for further education, employment, and independent living skills. So utilizing both the IEP planning process and the personal learning process, students with disabilities really should be able to have a clear vision of what their future is going to look like. We should be able to, as a team, assess their unique learning needs, their capabilities, and really use both templates, if you will, to set some targeted goals for the students and focusing more on their strengths and their interests and how are those going to align to get them ready for the future. As we know, the IEP is really the cornerstone for education for our kids with disabilities. And as a reminder, every student who is receiving special ed services needs to have that IEP that really drives the programming and the services that that student is going to get while they are in school. Again, the IEP is a great way for us to look at students' unique learning needs. So utilizing the personal learning plan and having students have a learning assessment, if you will, can be a contributor to the IEP planning process. Again, this is a great opportunity for students to be more involved in their learning experience. It really allows them the opportunity to control more of the situations that they are in and the experiential learning opportunities they have, while also ensuring that they have access to our regular education opportunities just like any other student would have. The benefits of the IEP and the PLP is it really gives the student a story to tell about what is their educational programming going to look like. And again, it ensures an opportunity for students to actually do PowerPoint presentations at their IEP meetings to create that story to show how do these two templates, documents, legislative mandates, if you will, how do they come together to ensure that our students with disabilities have the knowledge, skills, and abilities they're going to need when they leave school and they go into the big wide world. It also gives families an opportunity to contribute to that story, if you will, and it also gives students that opportunity again to see that they are making some progress in their educational programming. As Deborah alluded to, there are 3 documents that are going to be sent out to you after the webinar. And one of them is a wonderful PLP template that is available through the MCIS system. And we have approximately 80% of our schools that are using that particular format system, if you will. So we really are trying to encourage our special ed teachers, case managers, families to get comfortable with the MCIS system. And when you see this tool and you compare it to the IEP template, you are going to see so many similarities. So again, as both Angie and Michelle alluded to, getting our students with disabilities acclimated to what is the PLP, how do some of those common elements align with the IEP, will again help to ensure that our students are ready in planning for their future. Common goals, really and truly this will lead to students becoming more self-determined and directing their plans. What do they want for their future? It's a great way in the IEP world to have students look at those measurable post-secondary goals that they need to think about. One of them being, what do they want to do for their future in employment? And what do they want to do for post-secondary education? How can they use the PLP to align and get them ready for their futures? If students practice these skills in a variety of different contexts, meaning they're practicing these skills at home, they're practicing them at school, they're practicing them through experiential learning opportunities, they will become more comfortable as to developing those needed skills. So again, if you use the personal learning plan, this also will help with the personal social development skills, those functional skills that students need, and how it can become real in that student's educational world. Much of the information that students are going to need to have, or families or IEP teams, is already going to exist through some of the special ed services and supports that student has received. So one of the places that teams can first look to are some of those age-appropriate transition assessments that students have had. You can look at work skills assessments, again, learning style inventories, parent interviews, and other opportunities. One of the components that both Michelle and Angie talked about is how important is that student's learning style, and how does that relate to their learning environment? Have we used both of these tools to identify students' skills, their strengths, their preferences, their abilities, and truly in what does motivate that student to learn? We put together kind of a visual, if you will, to show how similar both of these plans look. They both need to identify needs of the student, and then they also have kind of an end goal, if you will, of what did that student do from 9th grade to 12th grade and or beyond. So you can use both the IEP and the IPE as a review of that student's learning history over a 4 to 5 year period of time. We know that both of these tools need to be holistic, so really looking at that whole child and what does that child need in order to develop the needed skills to launch into employment and or post-secondary. We know that the development and the age of these tools need to be aligned. It has to be flexible and not just pulled out of a drawer one time over the course of that school year, but as Michelle said, it's a fluid document. So students, if they're getting access to their PLP during some of their regular ed programming, How do you change that over the course of time as needed? And the premise, again, is to really ensure that students are focusing on those long-range goals. What do they want to do after they are done with secondary education? Here's another graphic you might want to think about as you're developing both of these documents. Where's the student right now? Where should the student be? How are we going to get there? And how is that young person going to know when they actually get there? So setting goals, very important for both of these documents. Start with the end in mind. What does that student want to do once they are done with secondary education? What are the long-term goals, both for social, academic, and those life skill kinds of cornerstones? And then both documents require us to write goals that are specific, they're measurable, they're achievable, they're realistic, and they're timely. So special educators out there, you've been doing this for a long time, and you can actually be great contributors to the general ed population that is just starting to learn how to do this. Again, one of the things that we see as critical is this is a wonderful way for the student to be in charge of their learning, and that they can describe what it is that they are going to do to prepare themselves for, again, their future. As both Michelle and Angie alluded to, this is not just something that special ed needs to do, or this isn't just something that regular ed needs to do. This is for all learners in Minnesota, and again, we can utilize what we've learned in special ed over the course of many years to help influence the general ed world. Here's another side-by-side, if you will, that talks about the same things. An IEP has annual goals, so does the PLP. Assessments are being used in both of these arenas. Transition services are very similar, and in the world of IEPs, we talk about a course of study, and in the PLP, it's called a program of study. But once you get to see the personal learning plan template, you will see they look exactly the same. So it's just different terminology. Both the documents inform one another. So again, it really and truly is, how do we take that student's present level of performance? How do we incorporate that into a student's personal learning plan? How do we look at a student's strengths, their interests, and their preferences? So what's the plan? We need to make sure that they have career goals and post-secondary plans through regular exposure to activities. Those are those experiential learning activities that Michelle talked about that build into it self-exploration and career exploration skills. We need to make sure that students have a course of study or a program of study that aligns both their career goals and their post-school outcomes, either to employment or to post-secondary education. Things we know is that the PLP learning goals should align with the student's IEP goals. So we shouldn't have two different kinds of goals. They should be the same so that everybody, number one, the student knows what those goals are, and the family and the teams that are wrapping themselves around those particular students. The PLPs do not replace IEPs. Personal learning plans and IEPs are not the same document. Personal learning plans can be used to improve and expand sections of the IEP related to secondary transition. And again, through our presentation, hopefully these Q&As are pretty clear, but does the IEP take the place of the personal learning plan? No. Does a PLP take the place of the IEP? No. They work in tandem together. Here's some similarities and differences, if you will. They both serve a unique function in supporting that student's success, but one doesn't supplant the other. Personal learning plans articulate the learning experience that ultimately shapes that student's path to graduation. So in the world of special ed, if we have some learners who might not know what their graduation path is and how does their IEP align to graduation, utilizing the PLP might be another a way to generate some great conversation with that student about graduation. The IEP outlines the specially designed instruction and services that that student is going to need so that they can access that general ed curriculum. So again, it is a contributor to that personal learning plan. Here's just a picture that talks about the goal. We really and truly want to ensure that all of our Minnesota youth have the skills, the knowledge, and the abilities so that they are college and career ready in their future. We have some contact information for you if you have further questions for Angie, Michelle, or myself, but at this point we're going to turn it over to Deborah to see if there are any questions that we can answer in the next few minutes we have. Thank you.
Thank you, Jane, Michelle, and Angie. We'll just leave this slide up so people can copy down the contact information for each of you. I do have a couple questions to start out with, and I want to encourage listeners, if they have any additional questions, to type them, and we have 15 minutes left of our broadcast to answer questions. So actually these are two related questions that you addressed to some degree, but I wonder if you could describe a little bit more whether or not there's consistency across the state, how much variation there is from school district to school district. You said that 80% of school districts were probably using the template for the personal learning plan of the MCIS. And then a related question is, if you are a parent or if you are a youth development staff at a community organization that is perhaps working with at-risk youth with disabilities, and you want to connect with your school district and what they are doing to implement this requirement, how would you find out about that, and how would you suggest going about that?
This is Michelle Kamenoff. I will start, and then if Jane has some additional pieces to add to that. So as far as consistency, to be honest, I think it's probably somewhat difficult to answer. As we alluded to, there are approximately 80% of districts that are utilizing MCIS, which is the Minnesota Career Information System. We know that there are also some schools that are using GPS Life Plan. Some may be using the Navient system. So there are a variety of different types of systems that schools may use. So as far as, I mean, I would have to say that in looking at the percentages and noticing that we have a large percentage of schools that are using MCIS, at what level and degree they're all using the template that's provided there versus another template that they may have developed at the local level is another possibility. So within some of the link that we had on the Department of Education website, the Toolkit, there are a couple of different examples and samples of some things there. So there are some schools that have put together their own template or their own system and way in which that they're gathering this information. As far as, it's a really good question that if you're a parent or another person that's working within the district and sort of wondering what the school district is doing, I would encourage you to probably start with an administrator at that school and or a school counselor, or even if there's a teacher that you know your student has a close relationship with. Because we really have talked about this as being a school-wide approach and it not being information that's held by one person, we would hope that how this is being done is a piece of information that many folks in the district would have, but I would encourage you to start with your administrator and or a school counselor to find out what system your district is using, and then two, how you might be able to access that information to know what sort of planning is done for your student. And I do know with it, I can't speak to all of the other systems, but I do know with the MCIS system, parents are able to, if your school is a member and is using the MCIS system, there are usernames and password that parents are able to get, so that there is really a collaborative parent, student, educator, staff members at the school who are all a part and can be a part of that planning process, so you have access to that.
Thanks, Michelle. I want to reassure people that you will get a copy of this PowerPoint, and within it is the link to the transition toolkit that has this information, as well as the copy of the personal learning plan template that we've been talking about, and the 9 points required in a personal learning plan. And we'll be sending those out to you after after today. We will also be archiving this webinar so that you will be able to access it from the PACER site, www.pacer.org. We have a category for webinars that you will be able to access, and those materials you will also be able to be downloaded from that site. I think this is really interesting information, very relevant to the folks who are being currently involved in the Minnesota DEI Partners for Youth initiative. I can see, especially for those youth that the disability resource coordinators are organizing individual resource teams and engaging people who are already working with youth in a holistic way, and that this will be a very valuable asset to tap into for that planning. I want to thank you all again for joining us today. Again, PACER Center is one of several organizations that are collaborating in the Disability Employment Initiative. That, of course, includes the Minnesota Department of Education. And the initiative is administrated and led by the Office of Youth Development at the Minnesota Department of Employment and Economic Development. This project is funded by the Department of Labor, and we hope to have you join us again soon.